We're going to get going with our couple of sessions, and then we have a wonderful lunch. And so I'd like to, what?
On the back?
Oh, my reserved sticker. It says kick me. So we have Ehsan coming up. Let's see, Roshani from the National Research Council of Canada, going to be giving us a case study on using predictive AI to protect the water supply. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, or good morning, or close to the noon, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Ehsan Roshani, as was mentioned, and I work for National Research Council. We heard a lot of good presentation this morning so far regarding the data governance and how to use storytelling and so on and so forth. I'm going to change the pace a little bit and kind of direct your attention toward a micro problem on application of AI on solving an issue. The issue that I'm going to talk about is actually nothing new. It's how to find source of poisoning or poisoning attack on water distribution systems. The work is actually a teamwork. My colleagues, Dr. Pavel Popov, Yehuda Kleiner, and Andrew Colombo have done immense work on this. However, today it fell upon me to do the presentation. So, to give you a bit of background, poisoning water resources has been around for a very, very long time. This is nothing new. If you get lucky and see the Da Vinci notes, he developed plans for Medici family to do this to their enemies. So at least 4 or 5 centuries of documentation around this exist. However, in the past, let's say 2 centuries, there were three main barriers against these sort of attacks. The first one was the creation of modern water distribution systems. These systems are huge. A city like Toronto has about 6,500 kilometers of water mains. So imagine if somebody wanted to poison this amount of water in them. It requires either to have access to super poisons, for lack of a better word, which is very difficult logistically, or you have to have access to a huge amount of normal poisons. Either way, it's very difficult logistically. The third barrier against this sort of attack was moral issues. Humanity as a whole actually grew out of these sort of gruesome deaths to their enemies. That's why we have organizations like OPCW or like CWD and so on and so forth that are trying actively to remove any military-grade chemical weapons, right? Unfortunately, since about 2 decades ago, there were 2 factors that came about in the world that shattered all of these barriers. The first one was international terrorism. And the second one was development of techniques that allow people to produce homemade synthetic opioids. All right? Some of these synthetic opioids are very, very potent. So that white powder that you see Mr. Lincoln is actually snorting, it's enough fentanyl to kill him. All right? And that's not the worst case. The worst synthetic opioid is something called carfentanil that is 50 times more potent than fentanyl. Fentanyl on its own is 200 times more potent than morphine. So that means carfentanil is 10,000 times more potent than morphine. So to give you some numbers, the LD50 lethal dose for fentanyl or for carfentanil, we're talking about microgram level potency, not milligram, microgram. So that milligram is 1/1000th of a gram, microgram is 1/1000th of 1 milligram. Okay. Unfortunately, this is a very popular substance for drug smugglers because you can carry a small block of it across the border without any problem. Right? That's why if you do a Google search on carfentanil or fentanyl busts, you will see a lot of news coming up in Google. This is one of them that I did, which is a very interesting story. Actually, firefighters receive a call from somebody in Pickering, and they go there to his home, and they find about 50 kilogram of weird-looking powder. Haul it back. They tested about 42 kilo or 43 kilogram of it was relatively pure carfentanil. That's enough to kill millions of people. Okay, and that's not the only news article that you would see. If you keep Googling, you will see plenty of them popping up. Okay? My point is that this is very abundantly available in the market. As I said, it is very, very potent too. If I want to summarize what I said so far in one graph, that would be this graph. The curve that I would like you to focus on is this curve. That looks like a hockey stick. It shows unintentional overdose deaths resulted from fentanyl and carfentanil family of synthetic opioids, just in US. All right, as you can see, they surpassed 80,000 at 2022. The data for 2023 hasn't come out, but I've heard that they have passed 100,000 deaths in 1 year. So imagine this is going on every year. 9/11 happened in 2001, right? And we had about 3,000 to 4,000 victims. We went to 2 wars, but this is happening every year in US. And we are not far behind if you look at the proportionality of the 2 countries. Anyway, it turned out carfentanil was actually weaponized before because of its potency level. For those of you who are old enough to remember Moscow Theater hostage crisis, this was the knockout gas that they used. Who doesn't remember or doesn't know anything about Moscow Theater okay. All right, for those of you who don't know, Chechen separatists took over Dubrovka Theater in Moscow with 800 hostages. And the Russian commandos thought, well, we can take over the situation with something called knockout gas. So they injected it into the AC vent of the theater. Unfortunately, more than 100 of the hostages overdosed and they lost their lives because of that. 2 of the survivors were actually British subjects. They came back to London or went back to London and they tested their blood. They found out, well, this is a aerosolized carfentanil that was used to immobilize people in that saga. Anyway, making carfentanil aerosolized is a little bit difficult, so I'm not really worried about it. But it turned out you can dissolve it in water pretty easily. It's highly soluble in water. It's colorless, it's odorless, and it is tasteless. So if somebody happened to put it in the water distribution system, the system could work as a perfect delivery system for it. And if it touches your skin, it can absorb through your skin, through your eyes. It's called ocular absorption. Or if you drink it through your...
Can I bring this microphone down?
Sure.
I can't hear you very well in the room.
Oh, sorry.
Very well.
Is it better now?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So where were we? If it touches your skin, it can go through your skin and get to your bloodstream. If you drink it, it takes about 60 to 90 minutes to get to your bloodstream. After that, it's a pretty fast death. Often you end with respiratory arrest, meaning that you actually forget to breathe. That's why the victims, they're losing their lives. Okay? Anyway, so we did a simulation to see what would happen if we put it in a water distribution system, right? Don't worry, again, this is a simulation. We didn't put anything in the water, actually. So the red dots that you see at the south of that water distribution system, it's the contaminated area after 1 hour. So this is after 3 hours, 6 hours, 9, 12, 15, 18, and 21 hours. In less than a day, almost 2/3 of that water distribution system, which is a relatively large city, got contaminated in a level that is 10 times more than lethal dose. Okay? So, I said all of this because I wanted to get to this one slide. We don't have any sensory system to detect such an attack if these kind of things happen. Okay, now the question is what to do now. I don't know how many of you have seen this movie, The Candidate by Robert Redford, but he went through a whole season of campaigning to get to the Senate. At the end, the movie ends with him asking his campaign manager, now that we won, what do we do now, right? What can we do? As I said, we don't have any sensory system. How are we supposed to detect these sort of attacks and figure out this is actually going on and how we can locate the point of attack? This is where we try to tell the story. It turned out if you distribute something through the water distribution system, the pattern of it will follow the flow of the water, right? So if you are exposed to these sort of potent substances, the first thing that people around you would do, because you will not be able to do it on your own, is to call 911, right? As soon as you call 911 centers, the timestamp of your call and the location of your call automatically are being logged in their servers. So now all you need to do is to figure out the pattern of the calls that you received if it matches the flow of the water. That's all we did. So we created actually an AI algorithm that looks at these patterns. So we trained pretty much every deep learning algorithm is available to find out the best application, the best approach to do it. We looked at GNN, CNN, GCN, and so on and so forth. For those of you who are familiar with these techniques, these are deep learning algorithms. And again, if you are familiar with them, you know deep learning algorithms require a huge amount of data to be trained on. And you probably could put two and two together and think, well, we don't recall any of these sort of attack happening before. Where did you get your data from to train these AI algorithms, right? So we created a whole numerical model of the water distribution system. We modeled the hydraulic of the flow on the system numerically, and then on top of it, we created a water quality model to actually model the way these potent substances could disperse in the water distribution systems. So the problem is, again, here is we don't know where these sort of attack happen from, or it starts from, when they start, how much potent material they're gonna inject in the system, what's the purity of it. So we came up with the idea to randomize all of this. We came up about 10 million different scenarios that we produced, and we fed it to an AI algorithm. And we got a really good AI trained on it that could tell us if this sort of attack happens by just looking at the pattern of the distribution of the data that we receive. And then it can alert the authorities. So right now it sits on top of a 911 call center. As soon as it sees the patterns, it flags the authority. So we tried it on a case study to see how it performs. So as you can see, this is a relatively large water distribution system. I'm not going to name it. It has about 40,000 nodes. So each node you can use it as an entry point. So we fed it to the AI algorithms, and we fed it in different chunks with different sizes. So the largest system that we had, the full 40,000 node system, you could achieve a 93% accuracy in detecting the attack and in locating the point that the attack started from, so that you can go back and isolate that area and clean it. Anyway, I said that we randomized a lot of different variables. One of them was the duration of the attack. So we assumed the attack could take between 15 minutes up to 6 hours, but the reality is that if you have the best 911 call hardware, call center's hardware, after about 2 hours, your system gonna be inundated with so much call that the calls that you receive would not be representative of the pattern. So in about 2 hours, the accuracy of our algorithm is about 96%. But we put 93 because that's for the entire data set. Okay, my point here is that the actual accuracy of the algorithm that we have is slightly higher than 93%. Anyway, we published this. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this work. We have published it in a journal of hydroinformatics. We also have filed a couple of different patents on it. If you're interested, you're more than welcome to download those papers. Anyway, to conclude my talk, currently we do not have any system to protect, any sensitive system to protect against these sort of scenarios. 911 call centers are a good data set that could be used. If I want to borrow a phrase from the first presenter, if we have access to that data, we could rely on AI to effectively detect these sort of attacks from happening. So that's pretty much my presentation. I tried to be as fast as possible so that I would leave some time for question if there is any. But I would like to leave you with a quote from one of my heroes, Gene Rand's, who says, "I don't care what anything was designed to do. I care about what it can do." And this is the guy that put humanity on the moon. All right, so thank you very much.
Okay, we have time for a few questions. Do you have any questions about the water sources and how to protect them? Oh, yes, here we have a mic for you. It's coming. Is someone, oh yeah, there it is behind you. Yep.
Hi, a great presentation. Just a two-part question from my end. What processes do you think you have that will help with like false positive elimination so that a call isn't placed to the governor that we're under chemical attack? And the other piece is I was curious if you were able to also identify the agent being used in the attack with the pattern. Like, for example, oh, this is spreading really fast, so this must be this specific chemical agent versus this pattern is a bit slower, so maybe it's this other agent, if you were able to use your AI to detect that piece as well. Thanks.
Okay, good questions. The first question was, how do you prevent false positives? Which is that I didn't discuss this on the presentation because it's too much detail, but what we did was we actually trained our AI on actual 911 call data. But we assume those data are noise because we don't have any sort of calls related to actual scenarios happening, right? So our AI is actually looking at all sort of data related to accidents, fires, somebody falls in sleep and breaks a leg. It can detect all of those. So when we learn those really good, we could minimize the false positives from the system. So that's the first question. The second question was on the speed of the spread and its relationship to the type of the chemicals. Again, we have designed this on fentanyl and carfentanil family of drugs. If we want to have a different type of chemicals that has a different dispersion rate, we have to do the simulations and retrain the AI algorithms. But we cannot, right now, it's not actually designed for looking at the speed of the dispersion and coming up with the type of chemical. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question over here. The mic is coming to you.
I just didn't know from which side. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. Is there an issue about triaging the 911 call that it is a carfentanil situation? I mean, of course, we don't know when it's going to start. We don't know where it's going to start. So somebody's calling and saying, well, I'm not feeling well, et cetera, et cetera. Is there an assumption underlying the whole thing that actually 911 is picking up these as fentanyl cases? Thank you.
Good question. Again, when we were training our AI on the 911 call data, we did not have access to the content of the call. We only looked at the metadata, meaning the timestamp of the call and the location of geotag location of the calls. So as soon as you have those, you can see the pattern, the spatial and temporal pattern of those. So it's not, you're not recognizing one call as the call that is related to carfentanil. You're looking at two different, say, let's say 20 different calls that are following the pattern and categorizing all of those as calls related to something that is waterborne. Okay? If we had access to the content, the job would have been easier. But again, when you call, you don't know what has happened to your friend that is on the ground not breathing, right? Even the dispatcher doesn't know what's happening until poison control gets involved and they look at the symptoms and they could interpret it as something related to a narcotic overdose, okay? But no, we did not have access to the content and we couldn't.
Okay, we have a
one
question
call
over there.
identification.
Thank you. First off, spectacular presentation. I'll point out I didn't drink any water during the presentation at all. I'm not sure I'm going to drink any more today, but a little concerning. The question's really around, like I said, super cool. I love like the whole premise of it's really fantastic. I just wonder about what it leads to next in terms of prevention, right? So once it happens, you know it's happening, but how do you stop it? And how do you have enough information to project where you're going to reach out to people to stop it, right?
Great question. Aftermath management is a huge problem. It's actually a huge unknown for us. We don't know how to clean up the system after these sort of events. That's what we are researching currently on it. Even a lot of chemical reactions with the system, with the environment, we don't know how they are going to happen, right? Water has a lot of chlorine in it, has a lot of fluoride, has a lot of other components in it that could react with carfentanil or fentanyl. But the truth is that because this substance is so potent, testing on it is very difficult. You need a level 4 lab to work with it. So again, there is a huge amount of uncertainties related to understanding of this sort of attack, related to the aftermath management. And to make it more difficult, reality is that every couple of months there is a new substance in the market with even higher level of potency or similar level of potency from a totally different family of drugs. So there need to be somebody looking at or monitoring the markets for this. There need to be a lot of research to go on into the aftermath management. All we did was we created a canary in a mine system, right? So it still unfortunately requires people to be exposed to these sort of chemicals and then to make the call. But what we did was we reduced the time that is required for it to be detected. Currently, it takes 12, 13, 14, 16 hours to detect, to figure out that there is something going on that is waterborne. With this, we're lowering it to 90 minutes. Okay? And that means huge amount of lives being saved. Unfortunately, still lives being lost as well. If you wanted to go one level further, you have to invest in developing cheap sensory system that you could distribute in the network so that they detect it rather than people being exposed and then you detect the event from their call. Okay? Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, we have another question in the middle of the room. Here, yeah.
And by the way, my goal was not to frighten anybody. But unfortunately, whenever I give this talk, this is part of a side effects. Right.
Oh, the mic's not on?
Check, check. Oh,
There we go.
My question is, have you considered general wider applicability? Given the fact that your AI model is actually just layered on top of the simulation, you're using temporal and you're using spatial, you're using shape vectors. to be able to anticipate, this has extensibility, quite obviously, to other phenomena. So if I was to think of forest fires, if I was to think of a lot of other very pressing issues across, if I was to think of oil spills, it doesn't necessarily have to be the 911 call vector. You can have other IoT type devices that are going to be planted in a forest, if you're talking about the forest fire example, in the water around very sensitive coastal regions, to be able to anticipate now in advance what's the shape, the spread, and the distribution of the contaminant. Are you exploring other options now in terms of, given that you've been able to demonstrate reasonable reliability of the model, extensibility now into other areas where you can make a real impact in just simply retuning your hyperparameters?
Yeah, great question. Actually, we are doing it, but unfortunately, some of it, or majority of it, are classified. I can't talk about them. But one of the major problems that we have is access to the data. For us to get access to 911 call anonymized list, it took about 2 years to sign an NDA. Okay? It's a huge barrier against this sort of research. I understand 911 call has a higher level of sensitivity and so on and so forth, but a lot of the data that we are working, although we are a federal government agency, we are still having a lot of problem to get them. Yes, we can expand it to forest fire, we can expand it to a lot of other health-related issue as well. A product callback is one of them. Prevalence of tick bites and locating them is another one that we're working. There is a lot of application to this AI that we have developed. That's why NRC has patented the algorithm and the system that works on it. But truth be told, is access to the data that is needed to train this sort of AI that makes it difficult. But yes, thank you very much. It's a great suggestions that you made.
Really interesting. Okay, thank you, Ehsan. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, to them. Okay.